Well, hello. Welcome to the first Allocator governance call taking place on March 4th. On the agenda, we have 5 quick points we're going to get through and then save all the time for anything that might be on your radar that you want to discuss. So the main points we wanted to make sure that you were updated, aware of, is scammer PSA. We noticed an uptick of these in GitHub, just making sure you know how the governance team will communicate with you and never ask for PII. We're going to check in on some of the inactive allocator pathways. So if you have not distributed DataCap in 1 year, we're going to be looking to sunsets, just making sure that's not a shock, and checking in on those people impacted. The MetaAllocator, we started this proposal 2 weeks ago, just letting everyone know that will close out tomorrow, and that's on your radar. And then check in. There's a new application template that we have open for draft. Love to share it with you, get your feedback. Eventually, all allocator pathways will resubmit this for 2025. So we want to make sure that this is updated lightweight for you. And then last was just making sure that if you are submitting for a new allocator pathway, that you're aware of the updated requirements for manual and RFA, and just answer any questions you had. So thanks for being here. Let's take a quick look. If this is your first time on the call or looking, any topics that you want to make sure that we allocate time for, please just put it in the agenda. The agenda is located in GitHub, and it's always open. We just ask that you put those in there 48 hours before the call. That way we just have time to put it on the radar. Today is March 4th. Next call will take place on 18 March, and these go on YouTube. You're probably watching it right now if you're not with us. Since February 8th, over the last 2 weeks, we've had 26 new clients served in Phil Plus, which resulted in 96 petabytes being distributed, and that came as a result of 62 active allocators in the program. So thank you. Appreciate all the work and time you guys are doing. All right. Hey, new updates. We've noticed a few random comments in GitHub here and there, foreign languages, but for the most part, I just wanted to flag that the governance team, Galen and myself, will never reach out to you and say, please email us an AOL address. I'm sure that anybody who's technical on this call is probably not doing that, but just bears well to flag this. Anytime that we email you, it will just be for requesting that token code just to verify your identity, so we know that who we're talking to on GitHub is accurate. But again, all of the support will happen inside the GitHub issue. We won't take it off to an AOL address. Inactive allocator pathways. 5 were sunset in 2024. We had 14 that had not distributed any DataCap as of an audit in October. All of those 14 pathways pretty much said, we're working on tooling, we'll get back to you. Well, this is the get back to us time. So we're just respectfully asking, if you have an open pathway, if you are going to be working on something, please, it should come to market right now in Q1, Q2 of 2025, or what we're going to do is sunset, welcome you back whenever you're ready to apply. So just as a heads up, if you have not used your DataCap and you are an active allocator pathway, this is that last friendly nudge before we start to look at sunset. And also friendly nudge, this proposal was talked about in the last call. It's going to be closing out tomorrow. This is going to increase the speed of DataCap Refresh by setting up a MetaAllocator pathway. If you have the slides open, I left all the talking points from last week as a hidden slide, so if you want to look back on it. But again, what this does is it establishes a MetaAllocator structure. So manual pathways don't have to wait for that constant refresh cycle from the root key holder. Really good stuff. Excited to see this roll out. All right, here's where we need some feedback, and I might turn the floor over to Galen on this next one as we go forward. Essentially, as we looked at the application form for joining an allocator, it's a lot. It's a lot of information to collect and submit, and a lot of the structured data was open. So we noticed a lot of the input was just long. So this updated form is designed to pull the information that we need for an audit, that we need to support you, and then save pathways time that may want to join. So this captures like the tooling that you're going to do with yours, the specifics that you're going to have for deal pricing, how you're going to be audited. So this is open for feedback. The link is in Slack in the main Phil Plus channel, and the link is here in the slide deck. So we'll just have this draft review, give us any feedback, and you'll see this go live in a couple of days. Galen, I see you joined the call. It's good to see you, bud. Is there anything you wanted to add on this topic before we went on?
Yeah, thank you. As you mentioned, just kind of reiterating the previous allocator application form. I think it was about 60 questions. We're looking to try and approximately cut it in half. I think that, we've been running that allocator cycle for over a year now. We have kind of been on a pretty good pace of about some major updates to the application process every year. We learn a lot from each of these application rounds. And I think that we've gotten better at, knowing how to communicate to teams what is expected of them, and also how to get the right information from teams that we need about how we're gonna hold them accountable. Each time we've changed the application cycle, we've kind of been going in that direction. How do we make it easier for teams to join, but also clearly communicates the expectations and requirements ahead of them, and allows us to know what these teams are proposing, what they're going to be doing with the data cap that they receive, how they're going to help push the mission of real clients with real data doing real distributed deal making. So this new allocator application form, as Carrie mentioned, we're pitching it as a proposal. We'd love to get feedback. What questions are we missing? What kind of other structure to the form do we want to see from the community? And then once we've finalized the questions, we will be pushing this and have all allocators reapply. The other reason for that is we've been running these compliance reviews, and we've had a number of teams that need to update their application form. They're no longer able to deliver on certain things that they thought they would a year ago. The types of clients that they're working with has changed. The way that they're performing diligence has changed. We had a lot of people say they were going to be launching certain types of tooling, and their kind of business model has shifted. So this is also an opportunity for allocators to existing allocators to more closely define how they're performing this diligence, and how they're going to be held accountable. What are the compliance checks that we're going to do? So a lot of information in this doc to kind of look over, but again, a lot of it is going to be very similar because it is mostly questions that have already existed. We will have teams reapply. There might be a slightly new flow for how you apply, but it'll mostly still be the same, where open an issue in GitHub, and there'll be a Airtable form for us to capture backend information, and that information will get pushed into a GitHub JSON file, and et cetera. So a lot of that should feel familiar. It should work really well, but we'll be testing it with the community. And then the governance team will be reviewing the applications and assigning people either into the manual diligence MetaAllocator that Carrie just talked about. And again, that way it decreases some of the burden on root key holders, because the governance team is able to approve these applications, connect them to that existing F4 manual diligence MetaAllocator that already has DataCap, and assign them a balance from that MetaAllocator. Then the root key holders will eventually be auditing our decisions on all of these applications, how much we're giving to them, who did we approve, how much did we approve them for in the MetaAllocator. But then they'll be just making batch approvals to that MetaAllocator. So quite a bit of information there. As far as timelines go, we're targeting Q2 for this reapplication. We want to get feedback from the community on the form. We still have some tweaks to make on the backend tooling. It's going to update, some of the JSON structure, which will impact some of the dashboards. So we want to know that those things are working before we launch it. And then we'll start taking all the applications and reapplications. Back to you, Kay.
I love it. All right. Hey, call open, please. Feedback. So we'll get going. Gavin, let me set you up. The next 3 slides are just checking in on the applications that become a new allocator pathway. So we've got a slide on the manual process, and we have a slide on the RFA. So Galen, if you wanted to talk to these, or I could kick them off and then pass them your way, whatever you'd like.
Yeah, happy to speak to those. If you are in the ecosystem, maybe you're an existing allocator who's running pathway, maybe you're relatively new to the ecosystem in some different capacity, but we are still looking at different manual applications for new manual pathways. as it says here, we've got about 60 plus pathways that are operating manually. That still feels like a lot. There's a lot of redundancy and a lot of overlap in how those pathways are functioning. We would still love to see a lot more specialization. So if you're applying to be a manual pathway, you're going to have a stronger, application to the community if you're doing something that is unique and specialized. And there's a lot of ways that you could do that. You could say, I'm performing manual diligence and I'm using, this process to vet my client, but I'm only working with clients that, come from this industry or have this, specific type of data, or I'm doing this to help prepare the data for my clients. And I'm helping them index it in such a way that it meets a particular standard. We would love to see these applications be really specific because that also helps us direct potential clients to you. When the application is kind of really broad or really vague, as some of them are, they'll work with open data, enterprise data, scientific data, individual data. They'll work with clients all over the world. It makes it really difficult for us to also assess when we're doing those compliance checks, how accurate is the information that we're seeing. So we're still taking manual applications, but we would love for those to become more and more specific and unique with less overlap. And market and automated. This is the other main area where we really want to see a lot more innovation. We've had the RFA open. We have not gotten a lot of great responses to that. We've seen a few. There have been a handful of different teams proposing kind of automated pathways or faucets where there's a code-based deterministic. We still want to see more market-based models where there's either a liquidity pool as a method of diligence to say, these clients and these SPs can pay into this liquidity pool, and based on kind of on-chain behavior, they can get awarded from that pool. There's a lot of ways to structure it. There've been some, brainstorm ideas at various dev summits and events. And we would love to see more of those things. The governance team themselves are not going to be the ones to design and implement and manage these pathways. Our responsibility is to help oversee and coordinate, these different teams that are doing it. So one of the main questions that still comes up is how will these things be audited? So if you're proposing an automated system where you say, anyone can scan a QR code at an event and get 32 GB of DataCap, how will we audit that you are only giving it out to the people at that event? What is the system that you use to both safeguard yourself from attack? What kind of gaps or guardrails do you have on your system that you could bake in, such as rate limiting, the number of requests at time or per a day, such as total outflow limiting, not once you hit a certain amount of DataCap pausing on yourself to reassess. There's different ways that you as a pathway could put in those guardrails. And so that's what we want you to be thinking about as you're applying for these, because we'll be requiring them as well. And then, K-Ray, before I go on, was there another slide discussing experimental or a pin in?
Yeah, just gonna flag that in 2 weeks. But if you want to soft intro it, we could have that.
Yeah, I'll soft intro it. We'll talk about it more. We're looking at similar to the way that we have the manual diligence MetaAllocator as a system that the governance team is managing. We're looking at another proposal for another MetaAllocator that is specifically for kind of experimental pathways. So these would be things that are smaller teams saying, I have an MVP for a market-based system. and I just want to test it, or I have an idea for an automated system and I want to test it. And those would be these experimental pathways that potentially would be getting a smaller amount of data cap simply to go do that testing phase where they've got a prototype and they need to get from prototype to MVP. We're ironing out the details of that. What would the implementation look like? Who would be managing it? What is the kind of requisite amount of, like I was saying, the guardrails on it? So that's probably going to be more information in 2 weeks, but just yeah, as Carrie said, soft intro. We're looking at some more ways to have more of this experimental pathway design. But yeah, more RFAs, requests for allocators. We would love to still see ones that are doing automated and market. A market is basically anything involving some kind of financialization as a deterministic for diligence. Like I've said, could be staking, it could be a liquidity pool, it could be some kind of fee structure. But the difference here is if you're manually reviewing your clients, manually reviewing their data, manually reviewing the SPs, manually reviewing the distribution, and you just have one little component that says, and we'll charge them this rate. That's mostly a manual pathway. So what we want to see is how do you create a market that says we can prevent a Sybil attack by using market factors, by saying it's more expensive for somebody to cheat this system. And we know that the stakeholders are aligned because they have a financial vested interest at some rate. So that's what we mean by market-based. I think that's all on those 2 slides, unless there was something else you wanted me to speak to, Carrie. I didn't know if I covered. Great. Fantastic. I'll stop hogging the airtime.
Turn it over to questions. Marshall, Steve from Ant Alpha, Ehume, Eric, Yvette, Leo, anything you guys were curious about, we'll have a open forum, but anything that Galen spoke to. All right, all right. Hey, last items, then we'll get into anything that might be on your radar. There was a question that was filed by Web3 Mine. They're a pathway that's currently active and they're developing in the eco space. And they kicked off a discussion in GitHub. Just wanted to bubble it up so everyone was tracking it. The discussion is kind of evolving around collecting input and sharing thoughts on payment modalities. Do we require on-chain pricing and when, and how does that look? And what does the feedback from the community look like? So rather than having a top-down, like governance is pushing this, really happy with Web3 Mine for kicking this discussion off. Just wanted to flag this for you. So if you have any thoughts or you have any input, just wanted to let you know that there's a forum where this conversation is taking place on GitHub, and the link is right here in issue 258. So if you have thoughts on that, love to get your input. All right, and with that, I will turn it open. If you're on the call for anything you'd like to discuss, refresh or applications or input, we've got a lot of SMEs on the call. Happy to dive into anything on your mind.
So I have one question about the MetaAllocator. Is the idea of having the manual allocator, the meta one, being just like a replacement for the root key holder, or is it more open to like more meta allocators being in the ecosystem?
The goal is not to replace root key holders. The root key holders still play a role in the system. The goal is to decrease the individual burden on the root key holders, where the root key holders were needing to perform kind of a third review of every manual pathway. And it creates more slowdown in the system to have the root key holders have a one-to-one relationship with each pathway. So the idea is, can we create a tooling and a system change that can insert a different kind of node into the architecture of that hierarchy, which allows the root key holders to now have a one-to-one relationship with the MetaAllocator and assess how is the meta allocator doing and its downstream impacts. That way, if the root key holders disagree with a decision, they would still be able to come in and remove DataCap from the meta allocator, or still be able to impact those downstream manual pathways. But the burden is not on the root key holders to have knowledge of every pathway on it. The other advantage to this long term is we can then have other teams propose other types of meta allocators. For example, there could be a team that says we are a coalition of storage providers doing kind of enterprise, private, encrypted, paid data storage. Here's our proposal for how we will manage that process and manage one another. And that coalition could say, we would like to run a enterprise encrypted data meta allocator. The governance team would, review it, work with them, work with the root key holders. But they might be saying, we are proposing running this entire thing, and here's the structure of the meta allocator. If that got approved, the root key holders would give it an amount of data cap, and that coalition would then be responsible for the pathways under. So it wouldn't be a coalition of people saying, great, we're going to run a single multi-sig and just give data cap directly from that multi-sig to clients. It would be them saying, we're going to run a system and have pathways underneath us. You can also see like examples of this in different kind of loans or grant structures where you have a group of people say, we want to run kind of a loan system where we're gonna have individual small loan officers who are looking at small businesses that are trying to launch in an area. We want to apply for a large vault of money that we're then going to give out in this way to like this community, to these types of people. So it's a way for us to design a system that says someone or a group could come in, design a meta allocator that has its own set of rules and similarities for the pathways under it. Root key holders will always remain involved. They're a kind of necessary and expected part of the system. I don't think that it is reasonable to say we can entirely automate every component of this to not need root key holders. I don't think that's a reasonable design direction. I think the better mindset is to say, what are the ways that we can decrease the burden, increase the efficiency, increase the automation, so that root key holders are now reviewing, a larger kind of application and approving it for a larger tranche of data cap, and it has more safeguards on it. So there's baked in security to say, yes, there's confidence in giving this large meta allocator a larger pot because it's not uniquely held or managed by a kind of single actor that could take over. So root key holders will still be involved. The manual diligence is the first one because that's the largest existing set of allocator pathways that we have. And I already mentioned we might see another one soon, and we would still love to see more people proposing them. But I do think that the next step for most of the people in the community is to design specific pathways rather than kind of get distracted by trying to design a different meta allocator. I think that we need to see some of those other pathways first, and then we'll see some more meta allocators come up.
Yeah. So you're open to having more meta like allocators in the future?
Yeah, the system would allow for other people to be designing other meta allocators that are kind of can function in between. There could be meta allocators at various nodes. You could see meta allocators parallel to the manual diligence meta allocator, as we've discussed. There could be potential for someone to design one and propose one and have them nested in some capacity once we get to that scale. The hope is that this system could grow to support, hundreds of allocators with less choke points onto kind of, just the governance team or just the root key holders being responsible for the entire process of approving, managing, implementing, managing compliance. That system doesn't scale if it remains really flat.
That's awesome.
Marta, hand?
Yeah.
Yeah, hi. So just if you can clarify a little bit, does that mean that like Fiddle could propose a MetaAllocator and just start having direct clients, and it's just basically a way to get more DataCap?
No, I don't think that we will see a MetaAllocator that says, I'm a team or I'm a coalition, and I'm going to give out DataCap directly from the MetaAllocator to clients. I think that we'll still see a MetaAllocator function as sort of a different and more unique governing body of the allocators underneath it. So Fiddle might propose one that says we have a design for a MetaAllocator that's creating a different kind of staking L2 pool that we want to test for changing the tokenomics of DataCap. And here's our proposal for it. Here's the type of clients and pathways and how we would do compliance. But then it wouldn't be that then that Fiddle multi-sig thing says, and now this F4 is going to just turn around and give DataCap directly to clients and get applications directly from clients internally. I think that then it would be, okay, and now what are the different allocators underneath? There would be another allocator under it, and it might only be one or two or three. If it's just one, I don't know the value of adding a node for just one person underneath. Where it makes the most sense is to say, we've got 2 or 3 teams that want to work on this, 2 or 3 pathways, or 5 or 8 or 50 that are similar in some way and agree to a similar set of rules and structure, and that would then form a cluster that would be governed by a MetaAllocator.
Right, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you. So it's basically like an umbrella for other allocators. It is not getting more DataCap.
Yeah, and
Right.
That's why the way that we showed that diagram of having the root key holders go to the one MetaAllocator, the one MetaAllocator go to many. It's adding a node to decrease the burden on the root key holders, but to increase the efficiency of what's underneath that node. So if someone proposed another MetaAllocator, but they were just working directly with clients, then again, I don't understand why, like what the value add would be versus them just applying as a automated or a market-based, or an RFA, and being a pathway first. Once they do that and they become really successful, there might be other people that say, wow, this is really working. We want to replicate this. We want to add capacity here. We want to add bandwidth. You're running some back-end system, and having 5 other people run a similar system would increase that throughput. That would be a time when we'd say, great, what does it look like to take those 5 teams and have a MetaAllocator supersede them? Yes, another question.
Yeah, so how is the structure of the communication and review between the root key holders and the MetaAllocator? If that, let's suppose we add another one of those coalitions and whatnot, how is the structure going to be between the root key holder and MetaAllocator?
So for this first one, the manual diligence MetaAllocator, we continue to track. The way that I've been doing is saying, here's all of the compliance reviews into a single issue, so that the bookkeeping and diligence process is consistent. And it allows the community to also say, okay, we've got 50 teams that are going to be under this MetaAllocator, and one of them is ready for a compliance review and is ready to get more DataCap. when did that happen? What was the justification? What was the amount that they were given? Where's the on-chain message that says, take this team, public open data team, and approve it for 10 more PIBs from the MetaAllocator. So tracking all of that bookkeeping, which requires, collating all of those compliance reports, getting them into as consistent and single of a place, collating the different on-chain messages that indicate that, so that then when the MetaAllocator is ready for more DataCap, because the MetaAllocator has an amount on-chain that it's giving out as this balance, the governance team goes to the root key holders and says, okay, here's our request for more DataCap to the MetaAllocator. Here's how much we want. Here's the justification of how we used it. Here's the bookkeeping. And so the root key holders can still perform as much of an audit if they deem it necessary. But the burden is not on them to need to audit. Okay, I'm going to audit this one pathway and all of the reasoning and all the requests to give this one pathway 5 more PIBs. And then I'm going to go sign it. And then I'm going to get the other root key holder to do the exact same amount of work and then go sign it. Instead, we collate all those compliance reports and we say, this MetaAllocator is ready for another 100 PIBs. And then the root key holders can come and look at, here's how we use the past 100 or however much. And they could either dive deep into every compliance review for every allocator, or they could say, you have bookkeeping for all of them. There have not been disputes or debates. The justification is there. The amount that you're requesting is justified and reasonable. The math is mathing. We'll approve this. So the evidence is there if they need to dig deeper, but it decreases sort of the requirement of having to do 2 signatures and 2 reviews from the root key holders for every pathway.
Got it. Thanks.
Yep. All right. Carrie, if there's nothing else, I have some compliance reviews to go do. So if we're good to go, I'll drop and see everybody on the next call.
Thanks for your time, Galen. Appreciate it as always. Who's on the call? Thanks for putting it in chat just to kind of go through Meta Era. If you're watching this or on the call, we should have you set up. Thanks for letting us know about your registry issue. It's all good to go. What else came through? Yangfing, I left a comment in your issue. So if you're on the call, let me know if you have any issues with accessing that. I got your email. Thank you. I shared the update on the token verifications. Thank you. I also came to your website. Thank you for sharing this. I left a comment in your issue as well, if you're on the call, that right now when I sign into that, it wants to have all the PII. And then it looks like Will also left you some comments. So it looks like we're kicking this conversation off. It's going live right now. Thanks for that. And then we'll get back to you as it goes. If there's anything else in chat, Patrick, I got yours on your application. Patrick, the reason for that slowdown, just to kind of let you know, it's that there was just quite a bit of irregularities that were identified here with the watchdog. So it looks like you've left some comments back on like, hey, we didn't see the data cap. Actually, that's the wrong one. Sorry, let me pull yours up here so I give you the, like, Patrick, I think this one is yours. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, essentially when we find lots of discrepancies like missing KYC, no documentation, limited retrieval, different SPs, different Tron schedule, I'll just be very candid. Like it requires multiple chains to kind of look at it, verify. And so it goes from being like an ideal less than 2-week process to being really time consuming. So that's where you kind of find yourself in this first review. Again, the goals of these review are to coach and help. So a lot of that's being spelled out. And like Galen said, when he dropped, you should get an update on this in the coming period. So thanks for flagging. I left a comment for you. We're just waiting for Galen now to kind of come in there. But the more information, the better as it goes back. So thanks for that. Hey, hello. We're here on the second allocator call taking place on March 4th. There's just a few of us on the call. So if you're watching this on YouTube, We just opted that we have the morning recording, and we're going to use this time to just talk about issues that folks are on the call. So first up, we have the wonderful Kenneth from Origin Storage. And the question was getting ready to like, when can that manual pathway be brought back on? Yeah, great question. Let me show you one slide in the deck as I talk, and then that might kind of answer your question as we go forward to it, and then get you guys all set up. So sharing screen, here's Chrome. So for Origin Storage, what we had was just kind of getting you guys set up for success with the distributions. You guys were taking off. We're looking at your application coming back right now. What we did is we set up two things. So now that this MetaAllocator is live, this lets us bring on new pathways without burdening the root key holder process. And then for these manual pathways, what you guys do and did is right in line. You turn in a new application, you kind of reset your expectations for how you're going to run your pathway, and that you've brought a client. I haven't checked it, but I'm assuming you guys brought a client through Waterdrop or some of the other companies that brought it through, just to demonstrate, you know, the process, the tooling, and all the setups on that. The time frame that we're looking at right now, today is March 4th in California. What we have set up going forward for like bringing these new organizations back on is looking at bringing you guys on probably like, it's hard to put a time frame. We're looking at setting up a pathway that's dedicated just to experimental, just to manual pathways, then giving you guys 1 petabyte of data to demonstrate, yep, we've got the retrieval down, we've got all the setup process on that. So a realistic time frame, if you wanted to go back, is probably like within around 6 weeks. That would be early April time frame. And that's for the onboarding, that's for the whole KYC, that's for getting it all back out. That time frame is fuzzy and it could move as it goes forward, but that's what we're kind of working towards on the governance. There's 17 applications that are a combination between manual and pathways, and trying to get you guys set up for success as quickly as possible puts it around that early April timeframe. Yeah, and thanks for your patience. A lot of stuff happens in that process, so appreciate you sticking around. Appreciate you coming to these calls. Appreciate the work that Origin does. Looking forward to getting you guys back into the fold. Water drop. I can't think if there was any refresh for your organization. I could pull it up. Is there anything that I could run down for you guys or make sure that you have to get you set up for success? All right. Well, if I had to guess, you're probably in the same boat with some of the applications with Unifot. So just kind of keeping you in the same update as we had with Kenneth. I'm sure there's like a little bit of collaboration between everybody on this, that we're kind of in the same boat as this one comes back with this allocator application. You've taken it to a different organization. It looks like they've brought this one to you or vice versa. So the next steps on this pathway getting set up will be onboarded once we have this MetaAllocator tree ready. And then the expectation is that this pathway, when it receives that small amount of DataCap, just knocks it out of the ballpark with retrieval, with the SPs being listed in the tranche schedule that you outlined. If that's the case, everyone's happy. It's going to be great. If you have any questions, let me know. Chandra, big friendly hellos to you, bud. We have small groups. We just said rather than going through the slides a second time, we'll just go over anything. Is there anything on your mind or anything you're keen to bring up? No.
Nope.
This might be one of those 1 hours where we get the 53 minutes back. Stop this screen share. Quick down and dirty. Everything's going to be on YouTube. Thanks for your help, guys. Water drop. You'll see that progress when that new pipeline stands up. Same with you guys, Kenneth. We'll get Origin back in the fold probably like early April timeframe once that application stands. So ping him, we'll go forward on that. Indeed. Well, Chandra, I hope all is happy and well. It's good to see your wonderful face, old friend. All right, I'm going to patch over to Slack. If anything pops up, I'll get a notification on my phone. But this is the thrilling conclusion of the very short, truncated second governance call for March 4th. You guys have a wonderful night, wonderful day. All the best. Cheers.
Thanks. Great to see ya.